Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Last Minute a channel that helps you with your life sciences. It doesn't matter if it's the night before your exams or your test or you're starting up a new section. This channel is here to make life easy for you. So today we are going to be looking at the nervous system. We're going to look at the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system, major parts of the brain, neurons, and the brain lobes. So let's get into it. So the central nervous system, which is the control center of your entire body, the central nervous system consists of the brain, which controls your thoughts, your memory, emotions, senses, and voluntary actions. It also consists of your spinal cord, which carries messages between your brain and body. It also controls reflexes. Your reflexes, we'll talk about reflexes a little bit later. The function of the entirety of the central nervous system is to process and interpret information and make decisions and send out commands. So your central nervous system basically interprets every single information that your body receives. Every single information, what you see, what you hear, what you feel on your skin, and even inside your body, what you feel inside of your body. Are you hungry? Are you sleepy? Are you thirsty? That's what the central nervous system does, and makes decision on how to counteract or respond to all of those messages and information that it's getting. Then we have the peripheral nervous system, which is the messenger network. How can I explain it in a way it's like the peripheral nervous system is like the customer service section of every business, where all the customers, which are your organs and the cells of your body, they all have queries, and they just tell the peripheral nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system goes and tells the controller, which is the central nervous system. So that's what it is. So all the nerves outside of your brain and your spinal cord, that's what your peripheral nervous system is. And it helps connect the central nervous system to the rest of your body, your organs, limbs, and skin, for example. And it carries messages to and from the central nervous system. Like I said, it's like the customer service for your body, where all your organs and your systems, your limbs and your skin, they all complain to the peripheral nervous system, and the peripheral nervous system goes and tells the controller or the central nervous system that this is what is happening there with the heart, this is what's happening there with the lungs, and then the central nervous system tells the peripheral nervous system what needs to happen and how we can fix this issue that the organs or the clients are complaining about. And then the peripheral nervous system is further divided into, there is the somatic nervous system, which is the voluntary system. This controls your skeletal muscles, so it allows voluntary movements, walking, writing. So, or maybe let's say you're trying to decide to kick a ball, so that's a voluntary movement. That's you deciding that you want to kick a ball, and the somatic nervous system helps create those commands in your bodies and make those actions possible. And then you have the autonomic nervous system. It's in the name auto, meaning this is for involuntary movement, or any sort of involuntary commands in your body. For example, your heartbeat. You do not control your heart muscles contracting and relaxing, allowing for the pumping of blood. You do not control your breathing, well, a little bit, but you don't think about, I have to breathe, I have to take a breath. You're always breathing. Your digestion, you don't control your esophagus, pushing the food down your stomach and down to your large intestines and whatever. You don't control sweating, so you don't think about blinking and all of that stuff. That is all done by the automatic system. And then the automatic system is further divided into two branches: the sympathetic nervous system, which is for your fight or flight. So this is like your very awake nervous system, your increased heart rate, adrenaline. So this is for making sure your body is very alert nervous system, and then your parasympathetic nervous system is your rest and digest. Basically, this is your calm body control. It puts your body in relaxed mode. So when it's time for you to sleep during nighttime, your body starts slowing down. You start getting tired. Your eyes starts getting a little itchy. You start yawning, like less oxygen is going to your brain. That's the time where your body's kind of like shutting down, lowering your heartbeats. That's why you're yawning, because not a lot of oxygen is going to your brain because your heartbeat is lower. So it's basically puts you in this paralyzed, I guess it's in the name, state where you can just be unconscious and sleep, so you can regenerate your body. So moving on, now we're getting to learn about the brain. So now we're going to learn about the major parts of the brain. The first part is the cerebrum. The cerebrum, the boss, it's the largest part of your brain. You can see the diagram that it makes most part of the brain. And this part controls your thinking, memory, learning, speech, voluntary movement, and your senses. And it is divided into your left hemisphere and your right hemisphere. So this is like the major boss, makes all the decisions, controls very important things as well, especially in terms of decision making, language, and all of that. It's all from the cerebrum. And then, since we mentioned that the cerebrum is divided into the left and the right hemisphere, there is something that connects those both hemispheres, and that is called the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum, which you can call the bridge between your left and right hemisphere of your cerebrum. This is a thick band of nerve fibers joining the left and right hemisphere, as I already explained, and it allows for the communication between the two sides, or between the two hemispheres. And just some fun facts about these hemispheres. The left hemisphere is the analyst, or the most analytic side of your brain. It controls, so another thing, fun fact about these hemispheres, they each control the opposite side of your body. So the left hemisphere controls the right side of your body. Very funny. And the functions would be logical thinking, reasoning, language, speech, reading, writing, numbers, and mathematics. And your right hemisphere, which is the most artistic side of your brain, they say, and it controls the left side of your body. Its function: creativity, imagination, art, music, recognizing faces, spatial awareness, emotions, and intuition. Honestly, they say that nobody is more left brain or right brain, but as you can see in the descriptions, I'm sure you can already think of people that are like more on the analytic side, especially like you already can think of people like, oh, I know someone who's like this, very logical, very reasoning, numbers, they're good with numbers, they're very smart with numbers and whatever. And then you know some people that are more creative, emotional, intuitional, like spiritual type of people. I'm sure you're thinking about that. But there is a fun fact that I know, is that women have, their corpus callosum has a lot of, much more nerve fibers than male, which allows women to be able to multitask better than men. So that's actually a fun fact. And I think there's also some sort of difference between the frontal lobe, a specific part of the frontal lobe for men, which allows them to be more good with like very mathematical stuff, you know, like figuring things out, being more handy and stuff like that. But that's just a fun. Okay, so the next part of the brain is the cerebellum. The cerebellum is the balancer. So it's located at the back of the brain under the cerebrum. You can see there on the diagram. It controls your balance, your posture, and coordination of movements, and it makes movements smooth and precise. Another thing about, as they say, it makes movements smooth and precise, the cerebellum also plays a role, as it's mentioned, your balance. and also making voluntary movement, like helping you be able to master your voluntary movement. So for example, when you watch a baby grows, you see that they babble, it's like they're talking, but they're not really making sound speech, and they cerebellum and they cerebrum both have to be very well developed for that to actually happen. For example, your child can walk, but then they are just falling every 5 seconds. They can't run really quickly, they fall easily, and that's because their cerebellum is not fully developed yet. And also this new voluntary movement that they've just figured out that they can do, they've just learned, they still haven't mastered it, and their cerebellum also is not fully developed to help them make sure that movement is nice and precise. And like you, when you're grown and you're trying to learn how to ride a bike, like it's the same thing. Like it will take time for you to be able to perfect it, and your cerebellum is the one that's helping you like be able to remember that muscle movement and then be good at performing that muscle movement. So that's how the cerebellum works. Balancer helps make sure voluntary movement is master voluntary movement. And then we move on to your hypothalamus and pituitary gland. Your hypothalamus is the regulator, and it is found below the thalamus. It controls your body temperature, hunger, thirst, emotions, and sleep cycle, and also maintains hemostasis, balance in the body. That's what hemostasis is. That's why it's called the regulator, because it controls, I would say, things that you don't think about in your body, and make sure everything is in balance. It's the right amount. For example, if there's not enough water in your body, it will say it will make you feel thirsty, so you can go drink water. If you have a lot of emotions, and then it will make you cry, or if you are so sleepy, or maybe like just how you every time at night you get sleepy and then randomly at 6 a.m. you start feeling less sleepy, that's controlled by the hypothalamus. It also controls your sex drive as well, but it just makes sure that there's balance in your body. And then there is the pituitary gland, that is the master gland. This gland is like a small pea-sized gland, and it hangs just below the hypothalamus, and it produces hormones that control your growth, reproduction, metabolism, and other glands. So this gland controls hormones most of the time. It affects your endocrine glands, which are glands that produce hormones. Everything that is hormonal is mainly controlled by the pituitary gland. And then we have this is the last part we're going to be looking at, and that is the medulla oblongata. It's the lifesaver gland. It really is a lifesaver, because it also makes sure that it controls the functions that you don't think about that keep you alive, which is your breathing, your heartbeat, your digestion, and your swallowing. It is part of the brain stem, and it connects your brain to the spinal cord. And you don't think about blinking, but the medulla oblongata makes sure that you blink, so now things cannot get into your eye that can harm your eye and make you blind. You don't think about breathing, but the medulla oblongata makes sure that you are breathing, so your organs don't die. All of those things. It's a lifesaver. It's the thing that's keeping you alive. Okay, so now we are going to move on to neurons, the nerve cells. So neurons are specialized cells that carry messages or electrical signals around the body and the brain. It just allows that there's constant communication in every part of your body. Every single part of your body, there's constant communication. So we have different types of neurons. We have sensory neurons, the senses. Sensory neurons basically carry messages from your sense organs, which are your eyes, skin, ears, nose, and tongue. So your sense organs, your 5 senses. Basically, sensory neurons pick up your 5 senses, which is sight, touch, hearing, smell, and taste. So it takes up all of that information. It picks up all of that information with the help of receptors, which are little cells on your body that help also pick up those information and tells it to the sensory neuron to take it to the brain, and it takes it to the brain. So for example, you touch a hot stove, your receptors are gonna the receptors that are on your skin are gonna realize that, okay, you touch something that is hot. But that message right now is just like, it's like 5 seconds or a second and you realize you touched something hot, but it's a whole thing. You touch that, your receptors tell your sensory neuron that this is hot, so go tell the brain that this is hot, and it does that. And then so it basically sends sensory messages to your brain. And the motor neuron, the movers, motor, M movers, M motor, it carries messages from the brain or spinal cord to your muscles or glands. So it controls movement and responses. For example, after touching a hot stove, your motor neurons will make the muscles on your hand to pull away, to retract your hand away from the hot stove. So that's why they call them movers, because they create the movement or the response that is needed. And then you have the interneurons. The interneurons, basically, they are like the connectors. So the sensory neuron will send information to the interneuron, and the interneuron is found in the brain or the spinal cord, and that's where it will take a decision that, okay, what are we gonna do right now? And then it will decide, okay, we have to move that hand away from that hot stove, or else this person is gonna burn that part of their hand and will not be able to feel anything anymore, or it would just die. So that's what it does. It decides what action needs to be taken, and it links the sensory neurons to the motor neurons to make sure that there is constant communication. And so now we're gonna look at parts of the neurons. So there's things like, make sure pause the video, look at the images so that you know each part. Very important to know and be able to identify these parts. So we have dendrites. Dendrites are like the antennas. They're branch-like structures, and they're the ones that receive the signal or the message from another neuron. They receive the message. I hope you can see in the image where the direction of the impulse goes. So it comes in from the dendrites and it goes towards the axon terminal. Anyways, so they get the information, and then we have the cell body or the soma, the control center. It contains the nucleus and decides whether to send the message onwards or not. So it depends on the neuron. The location may vary for the cell body. And then we have the axon. The axon is like the highway or the path at which the impulse is traveling through. So it's a long fiber that carries the message away from the cell body. So axon, away from cell body. So, and then we have the myelin sheet. The myelin sheet is like the insulation. It is a fatty layer that's covering the axon, and it's very, very important, and it allows to speed up signal transmission. So when there is enough myelin sheet around the axon, the signal or the message that's being sent will be passed on very quickly. So it's like the plastic that is insulating the electric wire. And then we have the synapse. So the synapse is the gap between two neurons. So it's not part of the neurons, but if you have two neurons, it is the gap that is in between the two neurons and where the signal jumps from one neuron to another. We will talk about the synapse transmission a little later, but first let's go through the reflex arc. So the reflex arc is like a safety mechanism that's in your body. It's automatic, you don't think about it, and it's life-saving. So for example, if you accidentally touch a hot stove, you don't wait and be like, should I move my hand or not? You don't do that. You don't contemplate if you should move your hand when you're touching a hot stove. Even a baby doesn't think and be like, oh, I don't know if I should move my hand or not. But you just do it automatically, very fast like that. And that is because of your reflex arc. So your reflex arc, what happens is that the receptors that are in your hand, they will feel that, okay, this is dangerous, this is very, very hot and dangerously hot for the skin, and then it will send a message to your sensory neuron. Your sensory neuron will detect this as well, and it will send it to your interneuron. Your interneuron is in your spinal cord. In the spinal cord, the interneuron is going to make the decision that, okay, we don't have time to go tell the brain to process this information. It will take too long, and by the time we tell the brain or we get any information back from the brain, this person's hand would have already burnt off. So instead, we're going to make this decision, and we're just going to tell the motor neuron to act, and it will tell the motor neuron or the muscle. The motor neuron will then tell the muscle to move the hand away. So with the reflex arc, the brain is not involved. It is just your receptor, sensory neuron, your interneuron that is in your spinal cord, and the motor neuron that is on that muscle that can help solve the situation. And then that's how it works. So it doesn't pass by the brain. It will tell the brain after you already moved your hand that, oh my god, this is hot. So you will notice that when you move your hand away from a hot stove, you don't feel the pain as yet. Like you it's like you feel the pain for like a second, and then after you've already moved your hand, that's when you start feeling the pain on your hand, and you're like, oh my god, this actually hurt. That's when you feel the pain in its intensity, that this hurts. But you've already moved your hand, and that's when the brain is now later informed about what was going on, and then you get those feelings of, or you feeling pain. So that's how the reflex arc happens, or the importance of it. Basically, it helps protect your body from harm without you wasting time and thinking. So we had talked about the synapse. This is the synaptic transmission, how neurons communicate. So what would happen is that the neurotransmitters that I will come across the synaptic gap between the neurons. So these neurotransmitters, this is how neurons communicate. They communicate using chemicals called neurotransmitters. So one neuron will release these chemicals, and they will fall across this small space, which is the synapse or the synaptic gap, and it will land onto the next neuron, and it will bind to the receptors on that next neuron, and then the neurotransmitters will attach to the receptors and then onto the dendrites of this neuron. So then the dendrites will pick up the message and then will move it across the X, or the neuron. So that this will trigger an electric impulse to the second neuron. So then the second neuron will also do the same thing, passing it on to the third neuron. So once the neurotransmitters have done their job and an electric impulse has been generated, passing along the message, the neurotransmitters that we attach onto this neuron, the second neuron, will get reabsorbed or reuptake or broken down or diffused away, so that there's space for new neurotransmitters for the next signal. So I hope that's clear. So we're going to be looking at the brain lobes. So the brain lobes are parts of your brain as well, but like this is like the smaller parts. We're looking at specific areas of your brain and learning about the functions of those areas. So we have the frontal lobe, which is behind your forehead. It's the frontal lobe. It's the thinker, the boss, the thinker. So the frontal lobe, again, it's thinking, problem solving, planning, and this is where your personality is also at. Personality, emotions, decision making, and it controls your voluntary movement. If there's this case, I forgot about it, but I learned about it at school, that there was a man, how they found out that your frontal lobe actually also controls the type of person you are. personality and also morality, like your morals, your values, is that somebody was working at a certain railway station, and an explosion occurred, and a metal rod went through his head, and it literally just passed through his frontal lobe, and miraculously he did not die. They removed the rod, he lived, but then he was a totally different person. He went from being a responsible person, very respectful, nice person, into a very rude, disrespectful, irresponsible person. He was still an independent human being who could take care of themselves, but very, very rude. Like it's like he just became a new, different person. That's how they figured out that the frontal lobe, this happened a long time ago. That's how they figured out that the frontal lobe also plays a role in your personality and your morals and all of that stuff. So that's a cool story. You should research about it for sure. You'll find out more about it. And then that's your frontal lobe. So then you have your parietal lobe. That is the sense mixer. It's at the top middle part of your brain. Its function, it processes your pressure, your touch, like feeling on your body or your skin, pressure, if somebody's pushing you, or maybe you're feeling some pressure within your body, pain, your temperature. So it deals with the sensory cortex, and also helps you to understand your spatial awareness, where your body is in space. Are you laying? Are you standing? Are you upside down? That's what it also helps read in your body. And then you also have your temporal lobe, which is like right behind or near your ear, like at the top of your ears. So the top of ears, that's your temporal lobe. That's for listening and remembering, and it's right next to your ear, so that's how you would know, listen and remember. So it's on both sides of your head, and the function is for your hearing and understanding sounds. So not only just hearing the sounds, but understanding that if you hear somebody say your name, you know that, oh, this person is saying my name. I understand them saying my name, and I can hear them saying my name. And even worse, it also helps you with recognition. You know who's calling you by just the sound of the voice. Oh, it's my mother, it's my brother, it's my friend. That also, there's deeper stuff inside your temporal lobe that helps you understand of that. So language comprehension, you being able to understand English, your home language, or even being able to hear that, okay, somebody's speaking a language that I do not know. I know this language by name, like it's Spanish, but I'm not fluent in Spanish. I cannot speak Spanish. Also helps you with memory. So as I said, identifying languages, identifying people's voice, but also memorizing your notes, a song, and you being able to learn stuff. And then you have your occipital lobe, which is at the back of your brain or the back of your head. That's the vision center. It helps process visual information, color, shape, and movement, being able to see the door, being able to see the objects, like your kettle. As you can see, your kettle is 3D shape, so being able to see the depths, the length, the width, the height of the kettle, and understanding how it is. And also being able to recognize people's faces. That's all the occipital lobe. There's so many things inside there that helps control that. So we have come to the end of our video. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you subscribing and staying here and enjoying my content. I hope that it is very much helpful to you with your studies, and it makes everything easy for you to understand. I would appreciate you leaving a comment. I would love to hear from you guys. Please also like this video and share it with your classmates. They are also in the same boat as you, trying to get that A. So share this video for them so that they can guarantee getting an A, just like how you are just about to get an A. So make sure to subscribe, hit the notification bell so you'll know when I upload in the next video. Thank you so much. Good luck with your studies. Bye.